I would ask you guys for your reactions from day one, but there really wasn't much to talk about.
I do think there is, Jay.
What stands out to you?
Well, what stands out to me, we talked about this briefly yesterday, is Deshaun Watson not speaking. And I was very disappointed in that. I thought about it more last night. And, yesterday we talked about, you and I, G, both said, hey, you can move on, talk about the, just the on-the-field stuff. But, I was thinking about it because since the last time he spoke, the only thing off the field that has changed is that he settled the 20 cases.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So there's definitely going to be somebody that wants to, multiple people that want to ask him, well, why did you said you weren't going to settle? You said you wanted to take it to court. Why did you settle? If I were him, I would have wanted. Now, maybe he didn't want to talk. Maybe the Browns didn't want him to talk. Maybe they just want to wait till this is decided before they do that. But he is eventually going to be and must be the face of this franchise.
Right.
And I think the face of the franchise should speak on the first day of training camp. I think it's important to show his leadership, his command of the team. And I think it's disappointing that he didn't talk. I'm not killing him for it, but I think it's disappointing.
It's like it wasn't his decision.
But you know what? He should have said to the Browns, no, I'm going to go talk.
But I think I disagree. And I do think that I think the problem is that we are at the tail end of this, hopefully. And I think that anything that he goes out there and says right now, Sue Robinson's watching and the NFL is watching, and he just wants to keep his head down and not say anything to try and look like he's maybe trying to move the deal one way or the other by saying, well, if he goes out there now and starts somebody's going to ask him a question. Somebody's going to ask him a question about his legal situation. Nobody's, the media, they're not going to be good and just be like, so who do you see being your weapon in the slot this year? Nobody cares. They want to talk about this, and even if you try and put a moratorium on it, they're still going to talk about this. And so it's going to force him to address it, and I don't think he wants to get on record as saying anything else right now. I think it's like the smart thing to do.
I think you're right. You are right in most of what you said. The one thing I would disagree with is that nobody cares. See, I think everybody cares about football.
Right.
A lot of the media members
and that's the problem.
Don't care.
Whatever we say, they will conflate anything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
So we're going to mince every word. Right now, we're going to be trying to dig for the next 30 minutes to find something that happened while they were lifting weights yesterday to talk about.
No, he's right.
If he would have said something that would be all that would have dominated the headlines, and they don't want him dominating the headlines any more than he has.
And I think you're both right. They're not mutually exclusive. People care.
Yeah.
I think the national media is in.
Yes.
They don't care about the
football.
slot receiver.
Yeah.
They want to hear him talk about the whole case. They want to hear where he is, what his thoughts are.
Yeah.
Because there hasn't been any availability since the cases were settled, I'm sure people want to talk to him about that. At 11:15, McNuggets, the players today, they haven't told us yet who's available. On today's sheet, it just says that select players.
Right.
They're going to talk at 11:15. Obviously, Stefanski will talk at 1:30, as he will every
Offensive
day.
lineman. That's what that means.
Yeah.
Joel Bitonio.
I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see who they trot out today.
I bet it's Joel Bitonio. I'm going to predict Bitonio, Amari Cooper, and
maybe
Njoku. I'll go Njoku
because
one guy on defense. You need a defensive guy. Two offensive guys.
John Johnson.
That's
John Johnson. There
that's
you go.
That's for your list for today. They'll have some.
Well, they don't. There is no list. It just says select players.
No.
I want to hear what Cade York has to say.
Mike does make a good point that anything he says on the off-the-field stuff can be maybe used against him potentially. I really want to hear him talk about football. I think the majority of our fans want to hear him talk about football, but ultimately you are correct. He's not going to get a ton of football questions.
Right. For me, the national media, they do this stuff, and they get mad when you don't give them what they want. We want our pound of flesh. We want you to stand and answer our questions because we deserve it. Well, listen, let me ask you a couple questions yourself, media. Did you go find Roger Goodell? Has Roger Goodell given any comments?
Mm-hmm. No.
Well, he's part of the situation, so why we not asking him no
Camp
questions?
out outside his house.
They did. Well, Roger Goodell spoke actually in the last
when he
few
had
weeks.
to speak at the Super Bowl news conference, when he was available. He was asked about it, but
that
in
was
terms
years
of
ago.
making himself available, you're right. A lot's happened since then. In terms of making himself available specifically for this, not a chance.
I don't think it's unreasonable to ask him, why did you settle these cases when you said you weren't going to? That's not an unfair question.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
The reason I'm not going to answer that question is because I got an ongoing investigation. That could get me.
Well, then he could say that.
And he has said that in the past.
And then it's like Deshaun Watson refuses to comment.
And by the way, Bush, he can use that as an umbrella all the way through the season because he still has 4 civil cases that are going to litigation next year.
I can talk about, and they know that. See, reporters. At what point? I'm not really a journalist. I'm an opinion guy. Mm-hmm. At what point, as a journalist, do you say he's already told us he's not going to say nothing? Right. So why would I waste my gas money to drive or fly to Cleveland to ask Deshaun Watson a question you know he's not going to answer. My thing would be
because your editor's sending you there.
Right, there it is, right?
They're the ones that
Yep.
want it.
They
They know that that's going to move the media.
That's the only thing that matters. They want something to move the needle. And so what you do is don't give them any fuel. I'm not moving nothing. I'm playing football right now. If it don't got nothing to do with football, I'm not saying nothing.
And I'm
There's a
okay
lot-
with that.
And there are a lot of things football-wise that I would like. Deshaun Watson hasn't talked much about football.
No.
I want to know what his relationship with Amari Cooper's like right now. I want to know how the young wide receivers are developing with him right now. I want to know how excited are you to play behind an offensive line that's actually going to protect you for once?
Yeah.
How excited are you to have two guys in the backfield that are a million times better than anybody you've ever played with before?
Yeah, all those are great questions. We all want those answers.
Right, but
G.
they're
Bush,
not
to
gonna
your
happen.
point, I was kind of in that between space. I've always considered myself a show host. I don't call myself a journalist. Journalists go dig for stories. I've never really done that, but I've always been lumped in with the media. I consider myself part of the media for sure. But one of the most grotesque exercises in journalism I've ever seen was when Tiger Woods was forced. He was forced to go before hundreds of cameras, hundreds of journalists, and answer questions about what happened on the night that he wrecked his vehicle, which was really over a personal relationship with his wife.
Crazy, bro.
And they brought him out there, and I was hosting the program that had to throw it to his news conference.
Yeah.
And it was like a group of crazed, starved wolves.
The tournament forced him to do that?
Everybody did. His sponsors forced him to do it.
Okay.
The PGA was encouraging him to do it. He didn't want to do it. Who would want to go out there and say, so I got a late night tweet from my girlfriend. My wife saw it. She hit me with a golf club. I was under the influence of sleeping meds. I got behind the wheel of my car. I crashed my car.
Yeah.
Who would want to go? Why would anybody have to talk
But
about
ultimately,
that?
he could have said no. It would have
Right.
cost him
Well,
money.
he tried. There was so much internal pressure that eventually his agent even said, we got to do this. Every sponsor, remember, Nike, all of them, were pulling back. We're currently pausing our relationship with Tiger Woods. And Tiger was between that rock and the hard place that no one wants to be. And I'll never forget how cringeworthy it was watching this grown man who had clearly made mistakes that would affect the trajectory of the rest of his life, because he was about to go through a divorce. He wasn't going to have his kids in his house every day. This was a man going through all kinds of pain. And in a sick way, the media at the time was loving it.
Yeah, of course.
They threw him in the frying pan, they turned the heat on high, and they sat back and watched him sizzle. And it was awful.
And watch this, because they can't get Deshaun Watson to come out and say what they want him to say, they're angry, they're upset. When we take a look at some of these polls we got, right? They not only are mad at that, they'll go a step further. They'll diminish what you've done with other people. Well, I got the Browns going this. I think the Browns are going to win 3 games. It's just
that could be confirmation bias.
It's a trickle down theory.
Yeah. Well, listen, there was something else interesting related to Deshaun Watson, I thought, from yesterday. We talked about it briefly. Myles Garrett had some comments about Deshaun Watson yesterday that I thought, and Leroy Hoard spoke to this as well, and I think this is really important. Myles Garrett has nothing to do with Jacoby. I believe in his ability, but I'm putting the pressure on us because I know what we have in store. And it brings up a good point that we as media members, right, as opinion guys or whatever, we can say the obvious, that if Deshaun plays 17 games versus Jacoby playing 17 games or even 8 games, that the Browns are probably going to win less games. How many less is debatable, but they're going to win less. Deshaun Watson's a significantly better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. But as players, as leaders, as coaches, Kevin Stefanski, the coordinators, the leaders of this team, Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, Joel Bitonio, whoever, the guy's getting paid a lot of money, and all those guys, Denzel Ward, are getting paid a lot of money.
Right.
There's no excuses for them.
Absolutely.
Right? This is not a... If Jacoby Brissett plays 4 games, 8 games, 17 games, we understand, rationally from us that the team won't be quite as good. But they shouldn't be terrible because they got a great roster. You know, if a team with a bad roster loses a good quarterback, I expect them to win 2 games.
Right.
The Browns have one of the best rosters in football. They're not going to be as good with Brissett, but they still shouldn't be terrible. They still should be competitive, and at the very least I think win 7-8 games with Jacoby Brissett. At the very least.
If he's here for the year.
Right, for the year.
Okay, right.
But there is no excuse for anybody to have their head down or do a woe is me.
No.
They've got to play to the best of their ability, whether he's there or not.
I thought Leroy was crystal clear on that yesterday, rock solid strong. You've been saying that throughout. It doesn't matter, particularly for the defense. Like Leroy's point was, what difference does it make to Myles Garrett, who our quarterback is? They're not on the field at the same time. Now, there may be added pressure on them because they know they're not going to put up 30 points a game.
Right.
So I think the line gets a lot smaller of what, teams will say, when I covered the Bucs when they had all defense before they got over the hump offensively and won the Super Bowl, and the defensive guys would always say, they would embrace it. We know we got to hold them to single digits if we're going to win. And that was their mission. And Warren Sapp said, guess what? We want to try to do that every game, no matter who's on offense.
That's right. Yeah. Myles Garrett said something very similar. He said, there you go. It doesn't change regardless how that situation works itself out, and we're going to hold ourselves to a higher standard no matter what happens, and our defense is going to do what we do. Last time I heard, they can't win if they don't score points.
Yeah. It's about time somebody took, remember the thing, disrespect. Every single time the Steelers get a new quarterback or something happens, the people jump out of the closet to say, well, it's the Steelers' pedigree. It's the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. They just will themselves to victory. It's about time.
And they haven't won a playoff game in 6 years.
It's about time the Cleveland Browns start saying this. They disrespect you. You got Pro Bowlers all over the field. They reduced you down to a quarterback that wasn't here last year. This is crazy. It happens all the time. If it's Bill Belichick, you guys need to get rid of Josh Gordon. Bill Belichick gets Josh Gordon? Great job, Bill Belichick.
Brilliant strategy.
Brilliant. These dudes do this to you every single time. The Browns going to have to look in the mirror and say, look, we got to come take the respect. It happens across the board. If you look at this team, there's no way you can look from top to bottom and look at from position group to position group, and they tell you, yeah, you guys got Nick Chubb, great guy. Myles Garrett might be Defensive Player of the Year. Hey, Denzel Ward, you got the best offensive line. But yet and still, when it comes down to the wash and it gets rinsed out, all of a sudden, you got 5 or 6 wins. That's disrespect.
I don't think, first of all, I will say, I think that the one guy that picked them to go 6-11, we'll get to that in a second.
Right.
I think that's an anomaly. I don't think it's impossible that they can finish 6-11 if Deshaun Watson didn't play the whole season. I don't think that's crazy. I think that's an extreme prediction. I think that's like the worst case scenario prediction, and I would never make a prediction based on the worst case scenario. But I don't think everybody is. In Vegas, the Browns have pretty good odds to win the division still.
Yeah. I want to say one thing about that Myles Garrett thing, which, again, nothing happened yesterday. Everybody, just breaking news, nothing happened yesterday for the most part. But I did like seeing Myles Garrett step up and take more of that role, and I think he's been doing that more and more as time goes on. I remember his first year here, for as giant as he was kind of like a quiet kid in the back of the room still. He was learning like you're supposed to and whatnot. He didn't have that leadership role. But watching him grow into that, and you need somebody obviously like that, and I like seeing him take on that role. But it's also what I'm scared of when they talk about media trying to catch people in these kind of situations that might not even necessarily mean anything. I saw somebody saying that he was calling out his fellow defense and challenging them. They're like, Myles essentially said to step up to the defense, and now, see, and that's what we're just like, can we find something in there?
That?
Can we find something there? I saw a couple of different tweets. but I did see a couple of different tweets about that. And
that's ridiculous.
I know,
they're just divisive, and oftentimes that's what they try to do.
They're just poking the bear and
And by the way, there was a post game last year that Myles Garrett did call out the defense, including himself.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And they kicked ass the following week.
And by the way, it was warranted. And
yes.
So I was thinking yesterday when we were kind of talking about leadership and how this team, they don't have a Ray Lewis. They don't have a Drew Brees. When you look at the 3 most integral parts of this team, and I'm not going to put Deshaun Watson into this group yet because he hasn't taken a snap yet for the Browns.
Right.
But I think everybody on this panel would agree that the 3 faces of this franchise right now, minus Deshaun, Kevin Stefanski, Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett, they're all the same guy.
And only one of them talks, really, is Myles Garrett.
Yeah, and Myles at least does, but Nick doesn't say anything, rarely does interviews.
Right.
Kevin talks to the media because he has to.
He says words.
But he talks around a circle, and when you're done, you're like, wow, that was word salad. He just
Uh-huh.
talked for a minute, and I don't have a note written down. I don't know what he said. So
Myles Garrett gives you more in interviews.
Miles is easily the best of those three.
Yeah.
But they always say that a team takes on the personality of its head coach.
Right.
And I think when Freddie was here,
Yeah.
it was kind of a frat room
Yeah.
feel to it.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, Stefanski came in, and it felt a lot more corporate and boardroom, and I'm okay with that.
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
I love boring.
I think, Jay, even if you look at some of the other leaders who are not as obvious as those guys, like Joel Bitonio, Denzel Ward, even Anthony Walker at linebacker, those guys are all kind of the similar mode as well. They're not like crazy guys or like and those guys need to lead the way, because in their position group, whatever. I think Denzel Ward does a great job. So does Anthony Walker. I think they got a leader at every level of the defense.
I agree.
Eventually it needs to be the quarterback. The quarterback's the commander of the team.
And
You're
by the way, I think Deshaun will assume that role once he's here and established his presence. He's not going to do that yet, clearly.
Here's what we know. We know that, or what I think we know, is that Jacoby Brissett is, we've talked about this before, he knows who he is. He's not going to try to chuck it down the field and be a superstar.
He's a check-down quarterback.
He's a check-down quarterback. He's going to get you the ball and let you're the stars.
Yeah.
You're Nick Chubb, you're Kareem Hunt, you're Amari Cooper, David Njoku, whatever. He's going to let you make the plays. He's not going to make some terrible turnovers. Everybody has some. He's not going to make egregious mistakes for the most part.
He's not going to try to be a hero.
Right. So he's not going to kill you. Now, he's not going to win games for you. Deshaun Watson will win games for you.
Yeah.
I don't think Jacoby Brissett is winning games for you, but he's not losing games for you. And last year, again, 2 years ago, Baker helped him win. Last year, he lost him some games.
He hurt them for sure.
Yes.
Before we move on from training camp, because we want to talk about that 6-11 prediction. That's next. I do think that we should at least read these. These were the names yesterday, the guys that did not participate. David Bell, we knew, the foot.
Yeah.
From all indications, it's nothing serious. He's going to be fine. I know that. I think you were super nervous about it.
I was.
Yeah.
I think everybody was like, we're good with receivers. He's going to be fine. Jack Conklin has a knee that he's nursing.
He was expected to take some time.
They knew he was going to be out. Sheldon Day back. Anthony Walker Jr. Is dealing with a groin. Denzel Ward foot. That's the one.
Panic mode.
That's what. Okay.
Straight up panic
I
mode.
was you too. And yesterday, Jimmy told us at 5 o'clock. Jim Donovan told us that he's in a boot.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm sure it's precautionary, but whenever I see my guy in a boot,
there's two things here. There's two things. I go back to receiver. I'm telling you, I don't like it. I don't like the depth of receiver. I just don't. If you got Jacoby Brissett, we talk about what you need to put around him. You're going to have guys playing at the optimum level, right? You're going to have guys playing ready to go because he's not Deshaun Watson. I don't feel comfortable coming out there with Anthony Schwartz, who I saw nothing from last year. I didn't see anything for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, I like the potential and all that. Great. But those are your two top. Those two top guys. And David Bell, the guy that you count on.
A lot of unproven there. A lot of unproven.
You count on him? He's a third-round pick. And you talk about he's going to be gone at least this week.
Yeah.
So
we've already slotted him in to replace.
And we were talking about Julio Jones the other day. Sorry to cut you off,
okay.
but he just signed with the Buccaneers.
He's off the market. Yeah, he's off the market. And I don't like.
But I love that we're already like, and then David Bell will just be the new Jarvis Landry, and we're done.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's not that easy.
You're right.
They put him right in there.
They put him right in the Pro Bowl. I'm like, wow, bro.
David Bell's like, I'm pretty slow. Did you guys read that?
And he was like, I did. People said,
I
Peter hasn't dropped the football yet.
Right.
And he was like, I actually did drop a football. It was in rookie mini camps. I just want to let you guys know. I did do that.
By the way, Stefanski was asked yesterday, hey, because not only is David Bell, out right now, there's another, camp guy or some other wide receiver further down the depth chart, I can't think of his name, who's also out. And they asked him specifically, are you guys thinking about bringing in a wide receiver? He said, no. Now, he's the type of guy that they could be, and he's just not going to admit that.
Right.
Ever.
Tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. One guy that we were talking about the leadership before we move on, that could become a vocal leader on this team, but his play has to, obviously, he has to be a proven commodity. But I thought Perion Winfrey at his new, with his interviews after he was drafted, his jersey is selling. which is kind of
Just 'cause
odd
of that
to me.
video.
Like exactly. I mean, what is it? He gets us.
Oh, 100%.
He gets us.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think fans will be really quick to try to sink their teeth into him. So if he comes on early, has a couple of sacks, plays
yeah.
well, he is going to be the kind of guy that with an arm gesture can get the whole stadium on their feet.
Because of our beloved fan base, a certain contingent of our beloved fan base, whom I love, if I were a Cleveland Browns player, and I wanted to sell some jerseys, I would honestly just show up at a couple of Cavs games, open a beer with my mouth, with my teeth, and then just chug it.
Talk about Big Chuck and Little John.
Talk about Big Chuck and Little John, and the next thing you know, your jersey sales skyrocketed.
You're absolutely
we are
right.
so susceptible to that.
I will say this though. Hopefully Perrion Winfrey can get this thing together, because I'm gonna tell you what. I'll give you your heyday when the Browns were rocking and rolling. You was at the old Municipal Stadium.
I was.
Hey, that place was a nightmare to come play in.
It was.
First Energy ain't nothing
It's
like
never
that.
even approached
It
that.
ain't even.
Yeah.
It's not even as. It's the most comfortable venue I've ever been in. You can bring your kids. You can bring your grandmother.
I've been to weddings there.
Yeah, people just.
I have.
There
I've
was a
literally
church
been to weddings
sermon.
there.
There was a church sermon right there at
Yep.
halftime, and these people is comfortable. Y'all better do something to get
Let's
that
go.
back. Get that back going.
Well, you know what would help that is a long winning streak.
There you go.
Win. Have a couple of years where you make the playoffs and you go
right.
deep in the playoffs. Can you imagine what a playoff game in that building would be like?
nuts.
Man,
That would bring it up into the Municipal Stadium, at least the fringe of
And
Municipal
bring
Stadium.
those freaks back in. All the dudes with masks, train it off. Listen,
The welders.
Listen, give me dog pound
I'm not
section.
going, but let's get those people.
Dog pound section. We gonna give them people in the dog pound half off. Come on in here and get loose.
We really should, at some point, have my father come in here and sit in with us and tell us stories of the dog pound and tailgating back in the day.
When
He's
it was
just
great.
he's
It was
like,
nuts.
the year was 1988.
Epic.
That's how it starts.
I brought a acetylene torch to the game. I wanted to go
Epic.
home with the seat.
He has so many hilarious stories like that he would not be able to deliver effectively on camera, and he'd embarrass me in front of all of us. But if you get him alone with a half a bottle of Irish whiskey and he doesn't think anyone's
be
watching
awesome.
him, I'll start recording them.
You know what? Surreptitiously record them. Get
Yeah.
one of those stories and
Yeah.
we'll run it.
Yeah.
All right, McNuggets.